Hello, Alfred here, and we're going to do a little recap of the college football slate that I previously did a video for last week. We had some success this week. The lineups that I went over, I ended up tweaking a little bit, but basically, if you remember, what I said was Auburn Tigers against Ole Miss was a slam dunk. I had UNC stacked in a couple different ways with Sam Howell and some of his receivers. Louisville, so Hawkins and Tutu Atwell, I specifically named. And then some one-offs were Wake Forest quarterback, Wake Forest Jakari Roberson as a one-off receiver. I think I listed possibly Oklahoma State, but we didn't know who the QB was going to be. Ended up not doing a whole lot of Tylan Wallace. I mentioned that Missouri had a terrible pass defense, but I didn't know what to do with Terry Wilson, who thankfully I didn't really end up playing because he kind of got benched, and I think he completed 2 passes into like the third quarter or something like that. But I did, we'll see. I did take one of their pass catchers. They have a guy, Josh Ali, who is basically getting all the targets when they throw. Now, there's not a lot of volume there, but when they throw, they're throwing to him. And so he made his way into my best lineup as a one-off. He was cheap, and I just decided to throw him in there kind of on Saturday morning because the Missouri pass defense was so bad, although that game really didn't go off, but Ali did come through. So that was the general vibe that most of the players that I named. And so the lineup that finally really got close to winning a tournament finished 4th out of about 2,700 people, which is a nice finish, tied with one other person who had the exact same lineup. But it was most of what I had said. It was Auburn stack with Nix, Bigsby, and Seth Williams. I actually wound up doing both Louisville players in this, so Hawkins and Atwell were in it. And then the big difference is I went a full Louisville stack here, so I decided to go with Cunningham instead of Sam Howell as my second quarterback, which turned out nice. He was a little cheaper than Sam Howell, I believe, and he came in really good. But that allowed me to play Dyami Brown instead of Bo Corrales, which unfortunately we got word Saturday morning that Bo Corrales was inactive, which there was no information about that I saw heading into the week. NCAA injury reports continue to be a total joke. And, unless you're on top of it, I think the notification came in at like 11:49 with a noon kickoff. And I just, was kind of doing something else and didn't get in time. I looked at it, I think it was 12:03, and saw the little push notification from that he was going to be out. And so he killed about 30% of my lineups because I liked him as a value play. So anyway, but in this iteration, I was able to play Dyami Brown. He went off for 20 points. He had 100 yards. So the UNC idea was right, but didn't really work out for Bo Corrales. And then as a cheap option, instead of Corrales in this lineup, it was Josh Ali, like I mentioned before. So this lineup ended up being really nice. Ali was super low owned, only 15%, and he had a touchdown, a couple catches at the end of the game, pushed me into 4th place. Every guy went off, actually, except for Ali, who his 12 points didn't quite get the on fire icon on DraftKings. But yeah, Dyami Brown was only 6% rostered, which was super. A guy like that, he's Sam Howell's number 1 target in a game that I thought was going to have pretty good passing volumes. UNC ended up scoring 48 points. So that's good. Louisville had just a huge bounce back. Kind of could really see that coming against the bad FSU team, but Tutu Atwell is only 17%. Hawkins was only 28%. He is a featured running back. The guy gets 20 plus touches a game. He's amazing. He's got long speed. He can take it to the house. He was only 6,600 on a guy who's going to get 20 touches against the bad defense. The more I thought about it throughout the week, I couldn't not play him. And so I ended up doing more Hawkins than I had originally planned because FSU's a bad defense. They were going to have, some chip on their shoulder. Louisville, after losing and getting kind of beat up by Notre Dame, FSU was coming in feeling pretty good about themselves after beating UNC, which I can't even imagine how that happened, but it did. And that was just a smash spot. Ended up playing a lot of the Cardinals. Auburn did everything you thought. I mean, they scored 35 points, which is a little bit low, but all their big guys scored. Bo Nix got in the end zone on a rush. He had 230 passing yards, but you knew he was going to chip in on the ground. He threw it a lot to Seth Williams, who had, 7 receptions, 134 yards, or 8 receptions. So, he's averaging over 15 yards a reception this year. He's a pretty good play, even if you don't correlate him with Bo Nix, I think, for a lot of the season. So everything really turned out pretty good in that lineup, as expected. To go over actually the winning lineup in the contest that I came real close was an interesting one. They actually did not use 2 quarterbacks, which typically, it's obviously different. That's going to be a unique lineup almost in any circumstance. We had some of the same players. Hawkins, Bigsby, Atwell, and Williams all were the same. They had Deuce Vaughn in their super flex, who was a pretty popular running back for Kansas State. I thought he was a little overpriced. He did wind up getting a touchdown, I think, in the second half, which got him to some value. He scored 25 points. I had Bo Nix basically at the same cost, who scored 26 points. That was basically a wash. I actually came out 1 point ahead. The difference that mattered was he went Spencer Sanders at quarterback, who I definitely liked the Oklahoma State, passing offense and quarterback against Iowa State. But we didn't know who it was going to be when I was making my original lineups. I think towards the end of the week, it was clear Spencer Sanders was going to be the starter. But even then, I personally didn't feel very comfortable playing him because Illingsworth had been really good in his relief, and he was coming off an injury. And so, they're ranked. They're a very highly ranked team. I mean, they're a top 5 team. They've got their eyes set on the playoff. And, I just was like, well, I could totally see Sanders coming in, struggling. Maybe he's rusty. Maybe he's not 100%. And, pulling him for the freshman who's been great. So I didn't feel great about playing Spencer Sanders or Illingsworth for that matter. But this person did, and they, came out on top. Sanders was 1.3% rostered. He did not even pair him with a Oklahoma State receiver. So, pretty bold move. That's not really something that I was looking to do. If anything, I probably would have played Tylan Wallace, which would have been a negative outcome anyway, because Wallace didn't go off. He saved about $1,000 between Spencer Sanders and my Cunningham from Louisville. And then that allowed him to go up to Amari Rogers, who had a big day, instead of basically my Josh Ali, who had 12 points, but Amari Rogers had 17. Per dollar, Ali actually was a better value, but at the end of the day, raw points, Amari Rogers for Clemson did put up 17 versus the 12 for Ali. So it was worth paying up, considering he didn't lose many points elsewhere. And then he was able to do Mechie at 5,500 instead of my De'Ami Brown at 6,200. Rogers and Mechie both scored more than Ali and Brown, which was the big difference. And Spencer Sanders had about the same, I think, as Cunningham for about $1,000 less. Actually, 1 more point than Cunningham for $1,000 less. So the big difference was Ali and Brown versus Rogers and Mechie, and that was the 9-point difference basically in the 2 lineups. Again, it was unique and it won the tournament. I just wouldn't have really thought of Spencer Sanders with no correlating receiver. I didn't love Rogers. I didn't love any Clemson players versus Syracuse. It turned out to be a complete actually, it was a little bit closer of a game than I thought. I think Clemson starters played most of the game. But Rogers, he had 8 receptions, 91 yards. he has a high floor, I suppose, and that's what showed up. But he didn't really go off. Mechie was incredible, but again, I think potentially was a little lucky to have Mechie as a one-off with Waddle going down on the first play of the game. He had 7 for 151. He probably doesn't quite get there with Waddle in the game the whole time, but you do need things to go your way, and certainly did. And then there was another one that finished second. We can look at that real quick. Jordan Travis against Louisville. He was 6,700. He scored 19 points. He's primarily a rushing quarterback, so you are going to get that rushing floor. I don't think it was worth it. I mean, he was 6,700. He only put up 19 points. Bo Nix put up 26 for only 300 more. This guy had Deuce Vaughn, Javian Hawkins, Tutu, Seth Williams. I mean, that's definitely a common theme over the weekend. He had, honestly, a guy I don't know much about. B. Moore from Kansas State had 3 for 33 and a touchdown for 3,900. So obviously that was a great play. He was not even on my radar. The big one was Javonte Williams for 7,800. So fairly expensive running back, had 37 points. He had 3 touchdowns in the span of 5 minutes, 160 rushing yards. Obviously went totally off. That was a huge difference between the two lineups. They had Will Howard for Kansas State, backup quarterback starting in place of Skylar Thornton. And, he put up 20 points at 6,600. That's fine. That'll play. I don't think if you're going to attack Kansas, I think you're going to attack them on the ground. I don't love a stack against the passing defense, but it worked. They scored 3 more points than me, so made an extra $100 or $200, $300. So that's huge. Really, Javonte Williams was the guy. Some of these other plays obviously worked, but weren't on my radar, and I'm not 100% sure they were, the best anyway, but it worked out. Those were the two. Let's see. Then the third place, the other one that finished ahead, had a lot of guys I liked: Nix, Hawkins, Mechie, Seth Williams, Mikhail Cunningham. They had Chuba Hubbard, who put up 26 at 7,500, but Tank Bigsby, for example, much better value there. Chuba Hubbard just isn't. He just doesn't look the same as he has been in other years. The volume is there. He's going to get 20 to 25 carries, but you are paying a premium for him. Josh Palmer was an interesting play. He was 3.5% rostered. I knew actually a couple of personal friends that liked him against Bama. I guess it was a running back or a run it back against the blowout, and maybe he catches some stuff, which he did. 4 for 57 and a touch for 4,900, returned 15 points. And that was good. Mechie, again, as a one-off, not even correlated with Mac Jones or anything. Sure, that worked. Again, I think without a stack, just Mechie alone, you were hoping for Waddle or Devonta Smith maybe to go out, and Waddle did. So there you go. And let's see. Then Michael Carter, who he did great. I mean, 5,900, put up 26 points. Actually, he's a really interesting player. He splits time with Javonte Williams for UNC. He catches more passes. He's explosive, and he can take a big one to the house. So probably not going to be a guy I'm going to play consistently as kind of the lesser part of the UNC backfield, if you will. So there you go. Those were the teams that finished ahead of me. Taking from that is John Mechie was a slam dunk. Spencer Sanders, in hindsight, was a good play. Wish I would have thought of that and just gone with it. Maybe made a couple with him once he was declared the starter. We also had another good lineup that finished 26th out of about 2,000 people in a different tournament. This one had Bo Corrales in it, though, and still finished 26th. It was really more similar to my original idea, which was Auburn, and then UNC basically stacked Bo Nix, Tank Bigsby, Seth Williams, Sam Howell, Bo Corrales, and then I did get in De'Ami Brown in this one. which I guess offset a little bit of the Corrales. And then, 2 Louisville Cardinals, Atwell and Hawkins. So that was really the smash. Those players were the smash for this week. And this one cashed pretty nicely, even with Bo Corrales out. I did a little funky math. I could have fit in Josh Ali instead of Corrales had I had the information in time. Had I even done just that exchange, this would have been a top five team in this contest. Actually, I think top 3 team in this contest. So I would have had 2 top 5 finishes in 2 different tournaments had I had the wherewithal to flip out Corrales. So I think that then there's another one that finished 300th or 333rd out of 2,700. And this was the other lineup, I think actually exactly as I discussed on the previous video. This was the Bama stack with Wake Forest value plays. So we had Mac Jones, we had John Mechie, who went ham, partly because Jalen Waddle injured himself out for the season, I think, on the opening kickoff. So he had a 0, and this lineup still performed. We also had Javian Hawkins on this one. Tank Bigsby, of course. I mean, I had like every lineup had Tank Bigsby, which I haven't really even discussed. I mean, he was phenomenal once again. I mean, the guy looks like a seasoned veteran, and he's 18 as a true freshman. That offense isn't amazing, but Tank Bigsby is his prices are going to go up. I mean, he looks incredible. Let's see. And then the Wake Forest guys, Roberson and Sam Hartman. Now, Roberson was okay. 4,600, came in with 10 points. He had 6 receptions for 46 yards. That offense didn't really they won the game, Wake Forest did. So I kind of thought they'd perform decently, but the offense just wasn't there. Vatek was really underperformed. It wasn't as much of a shootout as I kind of hoped for. Sam Hartman, $5,900 quarterback, came in with 14 points. Not great. I mean, there's really no way. You saved a lot by having him in your super flex, and I think he had a running touchdown, which kind of saved him from being utterly worthless. I didn't watch that exact game, so I don't know. He performed worse than his numbers. So maybe Vatek's defense was a little bit stronger than originally thought. He wasn't great, but this lineup still performed. And honestly, Waddle was 7,700. There's a ton of other players I could have gone with. Obviously, you don't know a guy's going to get injured, but had he played, him and Mechie, I think, would have been even better. So I think this was still a good lineup. The Bama stack was pretty strong play. And if you had Louisville Cardinals and Auburn Tigers, you probably did pretty well this weekend. So that's mostly what I talked about. It came home for us this week. And so, the biggest process there for the whole week was looking first at what defenses these teams were going to play. I mean, in college, in the NFL, you have the whole NFL slate. Every team plays each other. And you can say, this is the best in the NFL, this is the worst in the NFL. But in college, I think what we need to be doing, and this is the process I'm going to keep doing this year, and we'll see how it turns out. But, each slate is 12 games out of 60 games in a weekend. College football has got tons of teams, tons of rankings. So, on the slate, you may not even have a good defense at all. So if you look at the slate, you have to look at the ranks of these teams within the slate. You can't say, this is the 80th worst defense. I'm going to stack this team, but maybe that's like the second best defense on a particular slate. That's probably an exaggeration, but you can't look at national ranks. You can't look at, I think numbers as a whole. You have to trim down to the particular teams that are playing on a slate and see where the matchups are relative to just those 13 games. If you look at national numbers, you're going to get skewed and you may not find the value that actually exists. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at these defenses ranked, trying to find really weak defenses. I mean, last week was easy. Anyone playing Ole Miss, the year of Jubilee for that team. So I think there's other cherry picking matchups that we can exploit, but we really got to do the work of trimming down that slate and looking at it within those 12 or 14 games, whatever DraftKings puts out. So yeah, that's our process. And happy lineup building. We'll be back later this week for a preview of week 9, but that is the week 8 recap, and it was a pretty good week. So let's keep this thing rolling.